Hi, everyone, and welcome to Meant to Pause. I'm Kelly Coulter, and we're coming to you from beautiful Victoria, British Columbia at the wonderful House of Owl. And today I am joined by Lauren. So welcome to Meant to Pause, Lauren.
Thanks so much, Kelly.
I'm so happy you're here. I want you to maybe give yourself an introduction to our audience and tell us about your background and what it is that you do.
Thanks so much. So my name's Lauren, and I use she, her pronouns. I am a reproductive health educator and facilitator. Awesome. Yeah. And I'm a doula as well.
Oh, fantastic.
So I kind of wear two major hats. I have my master's in health communication from the University of Sydney. So I specialized, throughout my master's really in reproductive and sexual health care. And then, I've worked in the sexual and reproductive health space for the last 4.5 years too.
Right.
And I would say that my approach is very much this blend of, academia and study, and then also embodiment and experiential knowledge and mentorship as well.
Okay.
Yeah. My main focus is the womb continuum.
I love that.
Yes.
Tell us about
Such
the
a
womb.
beautiful term, right?
The womb continuum.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So it's this idea that, us having wombs, we have this like bigger cyclical journey that we, go on throughout our lives. So the womb continuum is made up of, all of these different experiences that impact the womb, or the transitions or initiations that we move through with having a womb. So this could be, your first bleed, your sexual experiences, your monthly cycle, abortion, miscarriage, birth, postpartum, perimenopause, menopause. It's really like looking at all of the like connections and ways that these different phases actually are all connected.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Could we go on that journey right now? Mm-hmm. Okay, let's do it.
I think it's a really interesting piece here. And of course, we're, on the Meant to Pause podcast, and there's this focus on menopause. And I think we often like view all these different phases and stages as inherently like separate from each other. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, oh, I'm this age now. Oh, I'm at this next phase in my womb journey. Mm-hmm. And it kind of comes as like a surprise, or we feel not prepared. It comes like out of the blue, right? But when we start viewing our journey of the womb and ourselves as interconnected, we can actually be prepared for these stages.
I love it.
Since we're preteens or teenagers, right?
I love it. Yeah. I think that is a whole new to me thought process.
Yeah.
Okay. Keep going.
Yeah. I will say, like, I had a mentorship through this incredible woman named Samantha Zipporah, and she was the one who first introduced me to, viewing the womb in this type of way. Okay. And ever since she shared that with me, something just clicked, and I was like, whoa, like, I literally have a roadmap, and I have a lot more control and power, and I can have a deeper understanding of all these different phases by viewing them in this way.
It's obvious you're a young woman.
I am, yes.
When did this journey begin for you? How old were you?
I've always been a really highly sensitive person.
Okay.
I've always been someone very just tuned into my body in a deep way.
Okay.
And I would say, only recently, over the past maybe, few years, have I, fully stepped into being like, oh, I can listen to my body every day.
Okay.
And I can follow her rhythms and her signs and make choices for myself based on that deeper inner listening. But I would say that sort of this bigger conversation started probably back when I was around 18.
Okay.
And I was put on hormonal birth control for the first time. I was only on it for 3 months, but it was the most brutal. The sensation was like, it felt ragged. Like I felt so dysregulated and far away from myself. There has to be another way to, come into communion with my reproductive health.
Cycle.
Yeah, my cycle, right?
Yeah.
And that felt really wrong for me. And so there has been, that kind of started this journey of being like, oh, well, what other ways are there? How can I develop a deeper relationship with that part of myself?
Your education and your mentorship, when did that start?
Yeah, so I did my master's in 2018 and I finished it in 2020.
Because you are young.
Yeah.
You have a level of confidence. This is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
In what is yet to come, right?
Definitely.
And I think that's what I want to get across to our viewers today is that knowledge is power, right?
It is.
And so give us some points of knowledge that we really should be aware of from your first bleed, say, or even before then.
I feel like keeping it simple is actually the most important thing here. I think knowledge is power. And I think we're going to talk about that in so many different ways, over the next, our time together today.
Yeah. And I should point out, everybody is different, right?
Yes,
so we're all totally different.
Totally.
So when I ask you, like, give us some hacks, give us some womb hacks.
Totally.
And it's like, but everybody's different, right?
They are.
So take us through what you've learned. How's that?
I would say 2 major things come to mind. The first one, and I actually would encourage everyone to do this who is cycling and is, still having a menstrual cycle, is to cycle track. I think sometimes there's this perception that like, I don't know if I want to do that or if I have time for that, or is that really going to help me? Is the energy that I'm putting into doing that really worth my time? And in my perspective, it really is.
Can I tell you my perspective?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I'm
please,
61 now.
Yeah.
And I remember, and it must have been when I was in my 40s, I would be like, there would be one night a month where I'd be like, I don't even want to put a label on it. It's like something's really not right here.
There's something going on.
And I'd look up and there'd be a full moon. I'm like, oh, hell yeah, it's the full moon.
Go. Yeah.
And then I'd be like, oh yeah, and I'm on my period. Oh my God. This is what is happening. Yeah. But every month it would catch me by surprise.
Yes, totally.
So I'm a firm believer in the cycling.
Yeah.
And as someone who studies menopause, because I'm hopefully going to be a menopause doula someday.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Cycle tracking is critical. So thank you for that.
I think too, there's, I would say, almost resurgence of cycle tracking being something that you should be doing and something that's, becoming popular or like even cool in kind of the wellness space.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And like, I'm here for that. I think it's amazing. I think with the introduction of femtech and...
Okay. What's femtech? New information?
It's basically like technology that is geared towards reproductive health. And I mean, in this specific context, cycle tracking. So like an app that you'd use on your phone for cycle tracking that would fall under the umbrella of femtech.
Okay.
Or there's this thing that I actually use to track my basal body temperature, and it's called a temp drop. And it's basically an armband that's worn every night.
And what does that have to do with your cycle?
Cycle tracking?
Your body temperature.
Totally. So there's 3 primary biomarkers that are related to our ovulation cycle and our fertility.
Okay.
So the first one is cervical fluids. And so part of cycle tracking, depending on the sort of, I would say the school or camp that you prescribe to, basically tracking your fluids every day.
Okay. Which affects your temperature?
And then our second one here is the basal body temperature. So basically when you're in your ovulatory period, you'll see a spike in temperature once you've ovulated.
That makes sense.
And it's basically because of progesterone. So the progestation hormone.
Okay.
It's like heating the potential bun in the oven, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our last one is cervical positioning. So your cervix basically shifts according to where you're at in your cycle.
Okay.
So these are your 3 primary biomarkers, but then there's all these secondary markers that also correlate with where you're at in your cycle as well.
So is that where the femtech comes in?
So femtech can be used, again, like it's more like a tool, I would say. So femtech, I'll give you examples. Yeah, the apps on your phone to track your cycle, that'd be femtech. The temp drop to track your temperature, that'd be considered a femtech device.
Yeah. For us, it would be, for my generation, it would be like a calendar, right?
Yeah.
Like we would have a calendar up.
So that's actually where I encourage people to start, because before you go and, start inputting all this data from your body into an app, okay, let's just start with what's the first day of your cycle, the first day of your bleed, right? Simple. Pen to paper, writing down where you're at, what you may be feeling, what's arising in you. Again, looking at those biomarkers, even putting them down if you want to. I actually have a really great resource that I'm in the midst of creating. That's just like a great little template for people of, where to start cycle tracking.
Are you at all concerned with women tracking their reproductive health right now in light of some of the things that are happening with reproductive rights?
Just being aware of what apps you're actually using.
Okay.
And I think, often we kind of just like gloss over the disclaimer or the fine print or the privacy pieces. I don't want to encourage anyone to feel like paranoid by any means. But again, it's being intentional about your body and again, your reproductive rights.
Right.
And my 2 recommendations, put pen to paper.
Pen to paper.
The other one, I use the Read Your Body app, and it is really an app that I feel like I can stand behind and advocate for. I've been using it for a long time. They take privacy and security really seriously.
Just encourage our viewers to be aware.
Just be aware, be investigative, be curious, totally.
Okay, good. Yeah. It is a concern.
It is.
For me personally, your womb, there are people that believe, I'm thinking of a wonderful writer, Indigenous writer here in Canada. His name is Thompson Highway. He talks about the womb as the soul. We have this life force within us. Maybe talk about like our emotional relationship to our womb. Yeah. If it is our soul.
I think even starting with, and you've done it so beautifully already, it's like, what does the womb embody or symbolize? It contains multitudes. And, words that come to mind, the womb is a place that symbolizes discernment, truth, intuition, the element of water, creativity, fertility. We contain it all. We have this cycle within us. We can birth. And then we can die, and we can have rebirth in the middle of that. We have the entire life cycle really within our bodies, month to month even. It's immense, really, the power in that, right?
I agree. Yeah. I agree. Like, it's almost like you can't even describe it. Like, you can't describe it.
It's so felt, right? Yeah. It's like,
For women in menopause, I can't speak for other women, but because you're not in a cyclical, you're less so in that constant cycle, and not to mention the physical part of like having a period every month and stuff like that, you're not reproductive anymore, right? So for me, my relationship to my womb, it's almost deepened because it's not something that is potentially torturing me a lot of the time, right? I don't want to say that because, it's a part of our self, right? But we're a little bit liberated from any of the negative aspects of our womb health or relationship to our womb. And we're more in contact with all of the positives that our womb has given us and continues to give us. Tell me a little bit about who it is that you're working with. I want to hear about women in menopause or perimenopause, actually, is really of interest. What are you hearing out there?
What am I hearing out there? Okay, so just launched, my own practice a year ago.
Yeah.
So I will say that I'm still in this phase of building that client base and that direct experience with people at all of these different womb stages. Like, this is a lifelong work. It's forever. And everyone, again, is so different, right? The population that I'm working the most with right now is postpartum. Okay. So I'm doing a lot of postpartum doula work.
Okay.
But I will say that most of my postpartum clients are 40 plus.
Oh, wow.
It's their first baby or maybe their second baby.
Wow.
But that's really the group that come to seek support. And what's so interesting with that, I've definitely been seeing it talked about online through like midwives or ancestral sort of like birth attendants. Women are having these babies when they're in their 40s. Mm-hmm. For some, they're going right into perimenopause, maybe having a few years and then, starting to experience those perimenopause symptoms. And it's almost like there's this interesting like mismatch going on with the different stages that typically, looking at it from like a historical view, women have had children so much younger, right? And so now we have, this incredible opportunity to have babies later and feel, I think, for a lot of people more resourced. And, my mom is an older parent. She had my youngest sister when she was 42.
Oh, yeah.
And
that's when I started menopause.
And there's such a wealth of wisdom that comes from being an older parent that I think for a lot of people, that's an incredible way to approach having children. But there is this like biological piece that I think is impacting that with all of a sudden, okay, you've had your baby, the next minute perimenopause is potentially starting. How to navigate that and need support, right?
Which is kind of part of the reason we do this show.
Oh my gosh.
You know, again, knowledge is power, right? Yeah. And for your clients that are having these two huge life events happening very close in proximity time-wise, that must be very challenging for both of you, maybe.
I think it is. And the second sort of like tip I wanted to share. Oh yeah. When we were talking earlier
all the tips.
Is,
we want all the tips.
Yeah, is rest.
Oh God.
And I think I'm someone that has struggled with this for the last 10 years, feeling and sitting with, I need so much more rest than I think that I necessarily do. And us as a culture in the West, we are not geared towards the yin, towards the rest and the softness and the space, right? Yeah. But what every single womb stage on the continuum requests from us is rest in some capacity. And so it's exactly as you said, you have these postpartum clients who have a new baby and are now perimenopausal. What perimenopause and menopause, I mean, you can speak so well to this, but rest is needed.
We call this meant to pause for a reason.
And like cutting away the
slowing down
and being slow and like how do you hold those two things when you have a baby or a young child? That's really complex, right? And that's when we need community support.
Have you ever heard of the NAP ministry?
No, I haven't.
Oh yeah. Oh, you'd love it. Yeah. She talks a lot about rest is resistance, and she talks a lot about it from a more anti-capitalist perspective, where when you're resting, you're not consuming. You're not participating in capitalism. It's really, I strongly recommend it.
Nice.
As a young woman, do you have younger women that you like in your circle of friends that have attitudes about menopause? Maybe talk to me a little bit about how younger women are viewing menopause these days, because I know my generation, it was not talked about at all.
I think it's still not talked about enough.
No, I agree.
Yeah. Like really,
But it's more than what it was, right?
It definitely is more than what it was, for sure. Yeah. My friend group, I'm quite insular in a sense in like, we have like similar interests or there's overlaps in our work. And so more ongoing discussions about all these different phases. But I would say, like, generally speaking, people are still not talking about it enough.
My perspective is that I celebrate menopause. The message I try to bring to younger women is, listen, this is a celebration. Like, get ready, because you're gonna have fun. One of our big challenges, women do not have proper access, and I fully respect what you do, and I'm so glad there are people in this world that do your work, but we do not have the resources.
I've already kind of spoken about this briefly, but this is coming at such a pivotal, intense
It's
time.
a week in history.
It is. Yeah. Definitely. And, for us with wombs and concerns about reproductive health and rights, like, it's a lot.
I guess that's the best way to sum it up, right? Like,
a lot.
We're at a point in time.
We are.
I'm glad that we have these types of podcasts. What I wanted to talk about next was misogyny versus progressiveness. And I'm not even sure if that's the right way to describe it. Yeah. How those worlds seem to be colliding a little bit right now.
I've spent the past 4.5 years working for a sexual health non-for-profit here in BC, basically managing sexual health clinics all over our province. I was part of the leadership team when contraception became free. Here I know. In our province.
Wasn't that something?
Incredible. And I want to hold that. And then also at the same time, I also want to bring attention to how important it is for us as individuals to take radical responsibility for our reproductive health and our reproductive rights.
I like the word radical.
Yeah. For myself, once I was fully able to take ownership, what happens from a lawmaking perspective or depending on different governments that we have in power, I actually feel very deeply that I will be okay because of the access to knowledge. I think that everyone deserves this access to knowledge. And again, it goes back to the cycle tracking piece, in this specific context, and also having community supports in navigating potential conception or abortion support. I'm very privileged.
I was just going to say,
I'm so privileged.
Not that you're privileged.
I am immensely so. And I have to also, I run things through that lens all the time because that's really important to me as well. So that's an element here too. But I do think that absolutely everyone deserves access to the knowledge.
Right.
To be able to navigate conception, a potential pregnancy or an abortion or all these other types of reproductive health things that arise too. And it's a complex conversation, right? It's not a one size fits all. I'm definitely not telling people not to be on conventional contraception. I think that's an amazing choice for many people. But what it comes down to is being able to make informed choices and making choices that feel embodied and that you feel good about, right?
So 2 things. Yeah. So access, right? That is the biggest, I think, hurdle right now. People don't have access to the information because it doesn't exist. Again, this is why we are doing the podcast. Women Talking is one of my favorite movies, not because it's a horrible story, but it's about how change happens when people communicate with each other. Right?
We need to talk. We need to share knowledge. This knowledge shouldn't be owned by anyone.
No. So with what's currently happening and what has just happened in the United States with the results of the election and the fact that we know that reproductive rights are very much on the agenda. We also know that that is something that is at risk here in Canada. Premier Susan Holt has now legislated funding for clinics, but all the provinces have their own leadership that imposes policy that affects the people of the province. Is misogyny and progressiveness and politics and all of these things, are we at a point in history that we should really be sitting up?
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
I'm thinking of you from a younger person's perspective. Like, how
Yeah.
are you feeling about this?
I'll be like totally honest with you. Like, I mean, I had an abortion 3 years ago.
Okay.
That was like such a impactful, like pivotal experience for me. I think part of the reason why I, became pregnant actually was because I didn't have all the knowledge that I have today.
Okay.
A huge reason why, actually. Even when you look at like that whole landscape, which is, again, it's on everyone's agendas right now. And we can see that and trace that throughout history, that the church and state are constantly having this war on the womb, right? Like this.
Interesting. Yeah. War on the womb.
Yeah. And this constant, battle over having power over it. I want to say that I feel safer in Canada, and I definitely do. And again, our access is much better than in the States.
Yeah.
But still, when you look at the abortion landscape specifically, or even sexual and reproductive health, there's not enough systems of support for any of these areas. People are still having to travel. They're not able to get into a clinic when it's an appropriate gestational age. There's even clinics that they only do abortions up until a specific week. And then it's like, well, if you need one past that, what are you supposed to do? There's a lot of these nuances and layers that come in.
Intricacies.
Yes. And
right.
Often I think we paint this with a broad brushstroke. These things are legal in Canada and they're fine. But actually, when you delve in, you're like, oh, no, there's actually a lot going on here.
Right.
And it's still very precarious. And
I agree.
Yeah, if you don't know, how are you supposed to, again, access systems when it's the time that's right for you or in the right location? It's very complex still.
So when we started, really delving into this, I recognized right away that there was no education about menopause, nothing. The women in the UK are so light years ahead of us.
They are. I know.
They really are.
They really are. Yeah. And I find
shout out to the women in the UK.
Totally.
They are warriors.
Yeah. I would say also in Australia, there's a whole
Is there?
Yeah, there as well.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. I think we can agree there's work to be done.
There's
right?
work to be done.
There really is. I want to offer you the opportunity to add anything that you want to talk about right now, what you want to share with other people about their womb health.
I think it really ties in with this rest piece. It's really allowing ourselves to sit with our bodies and our wombs. If you can, every day, just taking a moment, can even be, a couple minutes, just quieting yourself and just letting that inner voice come through and speak. I think honestly, sitting with our bodies and taking time with ourselves is something that many of us never do. And that's been revolutionary for me.
Yeah.
An example of this in my own life. Most evenings I'll lay in my bed and listen to a guided meditation.
Guided meditations. I live by them.
They're so good.
Live by them.
They're so good. And have a hand over my womb, a hand over my heart, and just take a moment with myself and listen.
And the breathing.
And breathe.
That's the breathing. I'm like, when I'm doing the deep breathing, I'm like, how come I'm not doing this all day long?
Yeah.
It is so calming.
It is. And I think most of us experience different levels of dissociation with ourselves and our bodies. That's so common. For me, there's always a big severance between my upper body and my lower body. Oh. And I'm constantly trying to unify the whole body together and feel whole. I
think that's a different episode.
But it is that. It's the how to feel these different parts of ourselves as whole, right?
Oh, yeah.
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 And
we're so mixed up in this.
Yes.
We forget about the bottoms of our feet, which are
feet,
probably
it always comes back to the feet.
the most important.
They're so important.
There's so much going on down there.
So much going on down there. Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. I digress, but I would say sitting with yourself, taking time.
Yeah.
The other thing that I found, getting support from my nervous system.
Okay.
So that would be the other sort of tidbit. Learn your nervous system in a deeper way, getting help, from a professional who is trained in that.
Someone who really knows their stuff. I'm not going to point fingers at anybody,
Mm-hmm.
but talk to a professional.
Mm-hmm.
There, I just pointed my finger, so I'm not going to point my fingers, but
Yeah.
yes, talk to a professional, because don't waste your money on stuff that you don't even know if it works. Don't listen to people who have no authority on a subject other than the
Mm-hmm.
fact that they might be a celebrity. Go talk to a professional. It might cost you a little bit upfront
Mm-hmm.
if you can afford it. And there are places that you can get free services. We've talked about it in other episodes.
And I've seen it in my own life where, you know, I've been really struggling. My pride has come in and I like haven't reached out for help.
Mm-hmm.
And I've, you know, had my best friend sit me down and be like, hey, like, I think you really need support.
Mm.
And like, I'm here for you. I know your other, you know, friends are here for you. Your partner's here for you.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like a point where I'm like, I need to go and get additional support from someone who has so much experience in this area.
Yeah,
and there's nothing to be ashamed about or feel heavy about. But I know it's hard for so many people, right?
You know what it is, but there's stigma attached to not being healthy. So that's a dangerous place for a lot of people. And I want to say vulnerable people are at most risk, right? And you probably know that as well. Thank you for sharing your experiences. Thank you for that, Lauren. I want to thank you for like just being a part of helping other people too. But I also want to hear about what other solutions you might think that we should explore.
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is even like this thread that we've been following through the podcast the whole time. And yeah, this knowledge sharing piece, this intergenerational sharing piece. I want to learn from you and I want to share with you what I know as well. That's so empowering. And just intuitively, I'm like, that's just what we should be doing.
Oh, I know.
When you look at culturally and socially different models, you know, in the West that we used to have, it is around that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's knowledge sharing. It's women sitting with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And being different ages,
I'm a big
right?
believer in that.
Yeah.
A big believer in that.
I think that's so huge.
Yeah.
And how that affects your health also is massive, right?
Yep. Magic happens when women gather, because it really does.
Yeah.
Like it really, truly does.
It does.
So younger women talking with older women and all the women in the middle. I think that's really the message. That I was initially very hesitant when you told me how old you were at our first phone
Which
call.
is so fair.
There's so many qualities that all of us bring to a conversation. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, Lauren, because I love what you do. I would love you to have been there when I was around on my, in my earlier days, because we need women like you in this world. So thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on Meant to Pause. And we look forward to seeing you for the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye. Was that okay?
We did it. That was great.